Welcome to the Pin Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pin Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shan DeGore.
And welcome to the Pin Leader Podcast. Today's episode is Small Behaviors, Big Impact, and I had the privilege of traveling to Los Angeles, California to do an on-site interview, and I am so glad to have gotten a chance to interview Dr. Antonio Harrison, also known as Coach Doc, who is an international keynote speaker, author, and coach. He is known for helping leaders and teams perform at a high level without burnout. With a PhD in applied behavior analysis and over 15 years as an educator, coach, and professor, he translates the science of human behavior into practical strategies for communication, resilience, and culture, helping leaders transform the workplace. He is a former collegiate athlete and longtime coach. He brings credibility from both the classroom and the field, along with grounded, relatable presence. Known for engaging, actionable talks, Dr. Harrison challenges audiences to lead with clarity, adapt to change, and create intentional impact in how they show up for others. And here is my interview. So, good morning, Dr. Harrison, Coach Doc.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good. So we're doing a podcast today. I'm so glad. I'm actually in, it's not quite pseudo sunny California, but I am in California before it gets too hot, which I understand
Yes.
will happen in just a few hours. But I'm so glad to actually talk with you, Coach Doc. You've done such great work. And I know that a number of individuals are listening in different countries and watching you online and hearing all the great work that you're doing. So today, our podcast is really about that small behavior and big impact, which you are known for actually doing that type of work and really making a difference in a number of individuals' lives through that. First question for you is, many leaders equate high performance with pushing harder. And how do you define sustainable high performance?
Well, I look at it from the lens of my history, which is athletic training. If you think of any professional, especially in athletics or sports, they cannot push themselves to 100% every single day. Rest and recovery is built into their training for high performance. There was an interesting video I saw on different training approaches, and a gentleman was saying, imagine if all you could ever, like the maximum amount of pull-ups you could do was 10. Like you could not do more than 10. Well, if you did 10 on Monday, you would have to rest on Tuesday. Maybe you did 10 more on Wednesday, and maybe you got it one more time throughout the week. And so you've done 30 in a week, right? That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But if I knew my cap out level, that threshold was 10, but I did 7 every single day, well, at the end of the week, you've got 30, I've got 49. You add that up over a month, over a year, I'm putting in more work than you, and I'm not burning myself out. So a lot of people will push all the way, what is it? No pain, no gain. I don't believe in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to be balanced across the board in order for anything to be effective. So for me, sustainability is understanding where your threshold is and living right underneath that.
You know, it's interesting because there's some most common behavioral patterns. I have heard that adoption of pushing. Um, you know, where does burnout come from? Because we hear about people do working and hard and then they don't see results and then they get frustrated. But can you talk a little bit?
You cut out there. You're frozen.
Can you talk about some of the other signs of that burnout?
I mean, it shows up in all the areas of your life. Maybe you're not sleeping as well. If you have children, you know that when you are in a burnout mode, you are irritable. The kid could
Mm-hmm.
do something by accident and you're ready to blow your top. The
Uh,
littlest small thing your spouse does that annoys you all of a sudden has become this big hindrance to your day. You can see it in your physical appearance. You can see it in your mental clarity or lack thereof. So you, the thing is, every single person knows themselves better than anyone else, and you know the signs. You know when you're creeping towards that edge and that check engine light is coming on. The question is, are you going to pull over and do something about it, or keep trying to push that engine until it just won't work anymore?
hmm. uh, we talk about daily practices because there's some individuals who say, I'll get up every morning and I'm going to work out. And then time ticks and then they don't actually do it. But, and then they fall off and they'll say, well, I missed today. It's all right. Maybe I'll get in 3 times this week, or maybe I'll get 2 times in this week. Can you talk about a daily routine that would help individuals like stay on track and maintain energy and clarity to really get that and focus over on the long term?
Yeah, I think the first thing starts with your sleep. I think sleep is very important. I go to bed at the same time every single day unless there's, some event that we're at or something. There's also no television in my room. So when I walk in that room, my body knows it's bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I don't use my phone for my alarm to wake me up,
Oh,
right?
okay.
I think it's called a sunshine alarm where what it does is mimic the rising of the sun. So sunlight gradually gets brighter and then it gives you some natural sounds to wake you up. And it's a lot easier to get that way. But from there, I don't touch my phone and have that stimulus for at least the first 2 hours of my day. I don't, because then you get automatically into this mode of checking this. And once you checked one notification, now you're going to check them all. And does that require me getting up earlier? Yeah, it does. Was I always a morning person? No, not at all. But just like anything else, you train your body. So from waking up, there is yoga, or first I start off with prayer. Then there's some yoga to get myself ready. Then I go get an exercise in. I come back, I have my coffee. I'm just relaxing. And after that, that's when I'll start to get the kids up, get them ready, get breakfast. But my phone's not picked up until I drop my kids off. Like I'll take it with me, but other than that, there's no emergency that's important enough um, for me to have that and check that at all times. And if you are an owner of a business or someone who's a leader in a space, if you can't have 2 hours to yourself, you're not structured properly in what you're doing, right? And if it is an emergency, well, guess what? My phone is always on do not disturb with starred contacts for my kids' school, my family. So that way, if they do call, I do hear it and I know that's someone I love. I need to pick up and answer that right now.
Okay. So for my leaders out there, notice they star the emergency situations and that's coming across their phones. I have individuals who their phone number, they've got 8, 10,000 contacts. Well, you can't maintain that. And
No.
those are not the most, you can't sell me that those are all critical for you to move forward and to be actually in your life. So they need to be starred, they need to be prioritized.
Yes, and it's all about balance, right? In all the areas of your life. And I think one of the real questions people forget to ask themselves is, one, why are you doing this? What are you doing it for? What do you want? And do you even know what that means? So many business leaders want to be these billionaires, these Jeff Bezos, these Mark Zuckerbergs. Do you understand the sacrifice and the amount of hours put in? And are you okay with that? I'm not okay with missing my kid's sports game or play at school. I want to be there. Now that's me. And if it's okay for you to sacrifice that for a goal you have in the long run, by all means, I'm not judging you. Just recognize what you're doing in terms of the imbalance of all the different areas in your life.
Mhm. Agreed. I talk about it in my book, The Pin Leader Path. It's not about who's working the hardest. I think that goes into that old adage about smarter, but it's not even about, it's about understanding that you can also rely on your team. And that's giving over some of the responsibility to someone else. And I know my sole proprietors out there, I know that's harder than what I'm saying, but you could still prioritize life and figure out how many hours in a week do I want to work? How many hours am I committing? to my family, to what's
Yes.
important to me, and really to get in some of those hobbies and relaxation times.
Yep.
It's so important. So many people give up their doctor appointments. I'm like, don't give up your doctor appointments. Don't give up the time to go out and take a run. Don't give those up. Or crafting. I've got some individuals that craft. It's really important. So let's talk about those teams, because those that have organizations that and I'm going to say it, especially for those that like to go out and say, I can't go on vacation because the office will fall apart if I go out on vacation. This is a telltale sign that this is not working for you too.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
I would. When I was in graduate school, the department chair used to have a plan. Her name was Rachel Taylor, and she used to have a plan called "What happens if Rachel gets hit by a bus?" Right? Excuse me.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Was that actually the name?
Yeah. What happens if Rachel gets hit by a bus? Well, because we were going through a just kind of an activity, and they were saying, well, what do we do here? What do we do here? And who's most important in ensuring that you guys get here and get this education? And my answer was the parking attendant. We're in Los Angeles. If the parking structure is closed, the attendant's gone who cannot open the building for us, I don't care who's here. We can't be involved. So what's the contingency plan for that, right? So if your business will fall apart without you there, well, then there's something you have to put in place to make sure that that structure is there so that you can take time for yourself, so that if you do have an accident of some kind, that business can keep running, and that dream and that purpose and that you have can continue to flow through with everyone else. But you got to have the get hit by a bus plan. It's absolutely necessary.
We're not talking it into existence, but we need to be realistic about this. We have
Yes,
to be realistic. And that goes into succession planning, which some organizations don't think about succession planning until the disaster hits, which isn't after the fact. And no one really makes great decisions on that when they don't have a good plan. So
very true.
yeah, let's talk about, there's such a change in economies, in what's happening now. A change is always happening. People having to pivot. What can a leader do to help the whole team move forward, to make a solid pivot and keep the sustainability of knowing we're all moving forward?
I think the first thing is know your employees' pain points. What is it that they're
Mm,
actually struggling with? Because you can comprehend what the bigger issue is, but you're not in the weeds every day doing the things that they're doing. And it could be a very simple fix. And the other thing is look to them for solutions, right? If if they are the ones who are doing it, allow them to be the professional that you hired and ask for their opinion. It doesn't mean you need to go with it, right? But I'll give you an example. When I was a head varsity football coach, the first 7 years when I was with one team, I did horrible. And that's because I wanted to control every single aspect, didn't want to give anybody anonymity. I didn't want to give anybody the right to do anything without my approval, right? And all I did was make myself too thin and spread out. And in the second half of my career of coaching, it was, I've hired you for a reason. I believe in your abilities. Here's the parameters of what I want. Work within it the way you know best. And when situations would arise, I'd go, what are your thoughts? How can we handle
mhm.
this? Now, did I always go with it? No. But in that dialogue and conversation, they felt seen, they felt heard, they felt valued, which allowed them to say, okay, my idea I'm gonna put to the side, or thank you for allowing me to utilize my idea. Let's run with it and see what happens. One of the greatest moments I think I ever had in coaching was uh, the I would sit up in the booth and call the defensive plays, and we would relay the radio down to another coach on the sideline who was my right hand, who would call them into the players. And I remember we had the chance to play in the LA Coliseum, and what a cool moment for a high school team. Like you just that doesn't happen, right? And
Mhm.
at the end of the first half, going into the fourth quarter, I trust this coach. I said, "Hey, coach, I want you to call this game. I'm just going to sit up here and watch. This is your moment. Fourth quarter, you do it. I trust you to
Mhm.
do that. I know you know what I want. I know you know what this, team is all about, what our scheme is all about, our strategy. Handle it. Here's your moment. Give it to them. You don't have to take that shine at all times.
Mm-hmm. What can you, because of your collegiate background, you're a team player, you've coached others. What is it that you would suggest from lessons from sports that can be applied into a workplace environment, especially for those that are struggling with culture?
Yeah. Discipline and consistency is huge that I've translated over. And the other one is understanding the necessity for failure. Most
Ah,
athletes rarely succeed. Like, we train and train and train just for the opportunity to succeed, and 80% of the time we fail, right? But if you can look over and go, we gave everything we had in that moment,
mm-hmm.
and we did it together. All of us played a part for something of the greater good. And we just came up short this time. It makes the successes that much sweeter when they do happen, right? And so, in terms of the culture building of it, you have to know your team as a unit and then each individual, right? I know the culture that I want. However, everyone is going to play a certain role within that culture. One of the teams that I was on, I was the coach and I, we consider ourselves different sides of the same coin. He was very much the love and community, and we all followed that suit. But when it was time to be a little more in your face and point out and say some things that people will have to accept, that was my job, and I understood that role, and I took that role on wholeheartedly. Doesn't mean that I didn't do the other side or that he didn't do my side, but it meant that everyone had their lane, everyone knew where it was, and we all worked together collectively, which built a culture of you're going to be held accountable, but we love you.
Let's talk about this quickly about individuals who are currently in a culture where they feel their skill sets are not being used. And the leader, unfortunately, might be micromanaging and trying to do their job and the next person's job. And uh, leader are like this.
Well, my any and I learned this in terms of my professional background and the guidelines of ethics that we have is the first thing you always want to do when there is an issue is address it immediately, right? You have to, if you don't feel comfortable communicating with the person you're working with in an adult and professional manner, um, and being able to express yourself, why are you there in the first place?
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
were if you were in a relationship in your home and you couldn't come home and speak to your spouse, why are you in that relationship?
Hmm.
Right? So the ability to say, I need to have a meeting with you. Here's what I think's going on. Here's where I can see different. But that's the other thing is if you do bring that meeting, don't just come with the negative, come with solution. Here's where I think we can do this. So that way there's a communication. And a big thing that I think is huge when you are addressing conflict is you have to stick to the behavior and not the character of a person. And here's what I mean. If I was walking down the street and you stole my wallet and took off running, and I ran up and I caught you, you have my wallet. That's a fact. You took it. I want my wallet back. But if I start calling you a thief and a degenerate and all of these other things, and you're a horrible person, now you get to defend yourself. It has nothing to do with the wallet anymore, the fact of the matter. Where you can say, you don't know me. I've got a family to feed. This is the only way I can do it. I've had, who are you? And we lost the point. What is the actual issue at hand and how can we correct this? You have my wallet. I want it back, right?
Hmm.
So stay focused on the actual problem with the solutions as opposed to the character trait that you're assuming of someone because most of the time you have no idea what's going on in someone else's head.
So true. And I have seen a deflection. I do see that. I'm like, we're going back to the task at hand, what actually occurred. And there's a deflection going off in a direction that has nothing to do with, and it's such a broader, I'm like, we're not talking about that. That's some of the best advice for those who really are challenged with conflict management or some leaders trying to avoid conflict. because they don't know how to step into the conversation and safely be able for themselves and the other individual to get on the other side without having an emotional outburst or and that takes training. This is not something you just happenstance into it. And so let's talk about that because you're doing great work in that. Can you talk about what your stage is and what kind of work you're doing right now? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is trying to work with organizations to help them build their culture, also to make sure that their employees and the leaders and executives have balance in their own life. So whether it's company-wide as a culture or just an individual who needs some personal help in areas in their life. And I did want to touch on one more thing that you mentioned with regard to that conflict resolution. You have to know your employees, right? Especially in the age we live in now, because back in the day, your boss could just tell you exactly what you they needed to say and could care less about what your feelings were or anything else. This was cutthroat. But we are in a space these days where like you really need to understand some people need a little more pat on the back and encouragement. Myself, a former athlete, I don't want any of that. Tell me straight up exactly what you need, what the solutions are, and let's get after it, right? Some need a mixture of the two, but if you don't know who you're dealing with because the only interaction you have with them is talking deadlines and you've never asked how's your husband, how's your wife, how are your kids, how's everything going, and you don't know the things that are going on in their life, you'll never ever ever get the culture that you want.
Oh, so true. I'd like to point out that individuals, especially if they're writing emails, if they're sending a text message to one of their team members, that taking that moment to slow down, read your text before you send it. Are you starting off with good morning? Are you starting with hello?
Yes.
How are you today? Those are just little things that you can do. It doesn't cost any money.
Nope.
Like, how are the kids? And especially if someone is coming off of a sickness, like, ask them how they're feeling before you go into what your own needs are. Is
Yep.
that report done? I think there's a lack of sensitivity that unfortunately people don't even realize they're doing it.
And it doesn't take very much time, as you mentioned, at all, right?
Oh,
It really, really doesn't. To just, whether you are standing there at the water cooler or in passing or in the email, just take the moment to acknowledge that this is a human being and not a robot.
amazing. Well, my fun part of my questions is what are you reading and what are you watching? Because you do so much great work in this. And because you've been in the field for decades and you have tens of thousands of followers who are following you, day to day now, what is it? What is it you're reading? What are you watching? What do you do to relax?
Well, exercise is one of my great forms of relaxation. Also, sitting with my coffee and meditation and prayer. The only thing I'm reading at the moment on a daily basis is the Bible, and I only watch sporting events or movies. Like, I've got three boys. I don't get a chance for that. But I will say, and this goes to my point of ensuring balance. One of the things my family and I do is every Monday night is we call it dinner and a movie. We clear the calendar. There's no hanging out with your friends. There's no doing work for me or my wife. It is, we're going to have dinner. And when dinner's over, we're going to put the projector on the big wall that's blank and we're going to watch a movie. And we just finished watching Beast Game Season 2, which you would think like that doesn't sound very intriguing. It was so much fun. The kids loved it. We loved it. Everybody was into it. And it got to a point where they're going, "Are we going to watch it today? Can we add in another day of dinner and a movie just to see the next episode?" And that
Aw,
takes 45 minutes out of our day, on top of dinner. But it was just so important because relationships are the biggest currency you can have in your life. And if the relationships in your home aren't right, how in the world are the relationships outside of your home going to be okay?
that's right. That is right. Well, Coach Doc, I can't thank you enough for coming on and really sharing and really giving some points that are practical guides on what individuals can be doing right now, both as a leader and for those on a team that are maybe feeling challenged right now. Where can they find more information about you and what you're doing?
You can check out docharrison.com from my website. On most of my social media, I'm at one Coach Doc, ONE Coach Doc, Harrison Tonio on Facebook. And we've been doing, I wrote a challenge journal, so we've been doing a 100-day challenge journal on the side of a Facebook group now. But literally, you can type in Dr. Antonio Harrison and a bunch of stuff will pop up.
So that's for sure. Well, I've enjoyed, having you as my coach and the fitness journey, and I really appreciate it. And I'm excited for the next stages that you're doing now. And again, what a lovely place to go out and work out in California. So thank you
Very
so
true.
much, Coach.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
And we appreciate our listeners who are catching this episode and sharing it. So appreciate it. And we also appreciate our sponsors. Thank you to sponsor Miss Shannon Root, Principal Real Estate Advisor and Agent Development Coach. And thank you to sponsor Ambrosia's Automotive, your #1 ranked auto repair partner. And of course, until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shan DeGore and brought to you by Mays & Associates LTD, creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.